Welcome back to Am I Famous Yet? Memoir of a Working Class Rock Star. This is chapter 16 called Half-Stepping at Halftime. I've always enjoyed playing music in my life and career. If it were only the fame I was seeking, I probably would have chosen a different career path. I like the mechanics of music. I like the connection with an ensemble of musicians. I like the collective enjoyment that comes from interacting with an audience. Clearly, I enjoy it because if I didn't, I wouldn't put up with how hard it is to be able to do what I do. Often I have opined to fellow performers that there's something collectively wrong with us. The need that we seem to have in varying degrees to stand up in front of a room full of people and demand their rapt attention means that there is something seriously damaged about us. For us to think that everyone else needs to shut up and listen to what we have to say because it's more important than what they have to say is clear evidence of mental disease. Arguably, bass players who stand back in the shadows of the stage are slightly less afflicted with this malady than are lead singers or lead guitar players, but we all have it to some extent. This is the longing for acceptance, esteem, and regard. It's the "they like me, they really, really like me" syndrome. These two things exist simultaneously within me somehow, the love of the craft coupled with my hope for acceptance. Now we come to the Groucho Marx paradox, which is, I would never belong to any club that would have me as a member. Clearly, this is an extension of never feeling that I'm ever good enough at anything or for acceptance of the matriarchal line of my family. But it is also what motivates me to push forward and try to get better at what I do. You know, on those days that I actually do get motivated. After a long week of half a dozen gigs, it's very easy to just want to stare at a screen during my one day off rather than write a book or music or practice my instrument, or go to the gym, or do anything else to get more famous. I don't even want to better myself in any way on those days. I'm tired. One indication of fame could be the size of the audience one performs in front of, right? So, when I played at the New York Jets football stadium to a capacity crowd of 82,566 people, that would surely indicate that I was famous, wouldn't it? Well, perhaps. Those 82,566 people didn't pay their hard-earned money to see me, however. They came to see the Jets play football. I was there with the cast of the Broadway show Rock of Ages, performing as part of their Thanksgiving Day halftime festivities. And wouldn't you know it, I didn't play a single note. This was not because I was suddenly seized with stage fright or anything. As often happens with gigs like that, the music is canned, i.e. pre-recorded. The only thing live are the lead vocal microphones. I must say that the cast sang beautifully that day. All I did was grimace convincingly, shake my bass guitar, and hope to catch a glimpse of my two-story-sized head on the Jumbotron. It shouldn't come as any surprise to anyone, yet I think it still does. Most TV gigs are either partially or completely pre-recorded, including the Super Bowl halftime show. Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers famously left his bass completely unplugged on their Super Bowl appearance just to make the point. There are some notable exceptions to this practice. Bruce Springsteen insisted that the band play live for his appearance, and rightly so. It took a superstar's insistence to force the network to allow him to do it, however. Networks and superstars don't like to leave anything to chance. Sound checking a 15-piece band in the 10 minutes between the end of the second half of the game and the concert's airtime is almost impossible. So most of the time the music is on track and just the vocals are live. So I performed in front of 82,566 of my closest friends, but I didn't feel particularly famous that day. My former landlord still tells his coworkers and neighbors that he had a tenant upstairs who played at the Super Bowl. I didn't. I corrected him on this repeatedly. He still never gets it right. To him, the Super Bowl is fame. I'm also an inductee into the Blues Hall of Fame. The word fame is right there in the title. That has to be fame, right? I am certainly honored and humbled by this distinction, but then I also notice who some of my inductee peers are from the New York blues community. Suddenly I don't feel so special. For one thing, there are quite a few of us. For another thing, some of the inductees never played much more than tip jar gigs in bars. I will continue to proudly display my induction certificate in a frame on my wall, but that particular Hall of Fame not only lacks an actual hall, it also seems to allow what they call unsung heroes like myself to be inducted. Somehow that doesn't quite feel like actual fame. To revisit the discussion about my celebrity photo album, of the 276 photos currently in there, I would venture to speculate that the average non-musical person has heard of less than a third of these people. A musical enthusiast may have heard of more like half of them. This is not to say that only half of them are famous. There are other factors at play here. One of them is that fame is partially a function of a particular time period. Someone who was famous in 1959 is arguably less so today. One has to be of a certain age to know some of the celebrities pictured. My pool of employers has traditionally skewed towards the oldies or classic rock end of the spectrum, though by no means exclusively. Another factor is diversity of musical genre. To have heard of everyone in the photo album, one would have to almost be a musicologist with expertise in many different styles: rock, pop, rhythm and blues, soul, country, jazz, folk, New Orleans, Broadway, and classical. That's a pretty wide spread for anyone. I'm enthusiastic about music, but by no means any sort of academic expert. The only reason even I know who all of these people are is because I've met them, worked with them, and done my own research into their careers. The reason I leave all of the photos up there is the same reason that I leave everyone on my resume, which is listed in the appendix of my book, which is clearly too long. I've discovered over and over again is that I never know what particular credit or photo is going to resonate with someone. I can't tell you how many times someone has looked at my website, scrolled through the hundreds of names or photos up there, and come back to me with a completely random single thing that impressed them. They'll say, "Wow, you played with Buster Poindexter?" Yes I did, I say aloud. But to myself, I think, dang, that was the one thing that connected with you? Did you lose your virginity to hot, hot, hot or something? As I get older, I have realized that maybe it's not all about being famous. It's certainly not about being rich. I live pretty humbly, but happily. When asked what I want for a birthday present, I always reply, I have everything I've ever wanted or needed. It's true. I don't covet having a lot of stuff. I have more basses than I have time to play, and more pairs of socks than I really need, though that does help stretch the time between loads of laundry. The salary that I gave up when I left my corporate record company gig in 1989 was $30,000 per year. That's equivalent to $60,000 in 2020. On average, I'm doing a little better for myself now than I was in 1989, even adjusting for inflation. This assumes, of course, that I never would have gotten a promotion at that company, just had salary raises to match the cost of living increases. Some years I do quite a bit better than my old corporate salary. Some years are just a little bit better. That's the nature of being a freelancer. What I do know is that I'm a lot happier playing music than I would have ever been as a corporate shill. Even though making money has nothing at all to do with being famous, it certainly feels like an accomplishment. As a full-time musician, I've been able to maintain continuing economic accumulation sufficient to pay my rent consistently for decades. This has to count for something.